Hello, fellow detectives. Welcome to Unlocked, the official podcast for all things Nancy Drew by Her Interactive. I'm your host, Tammy Tuckey, and this week we welcome two fantastic voiceover artists, but I'm going to let them introduce themselves to you.
Hi, I'm Rob Jones, and I'm the voice of Joe Hardy.
Hi, I'm Jonah Von Spreecken, and I'm the voice of Frank Hardy.
And I'm like fangirling over here. I was trying not to say too much before we started, but I love the Hardy Boys, and we have a lot of people on the show who also say they love the Hardy Boys. So you guys have a fan base.
Yay!
Yay, we have fans, Jonah.
Yay! How is that possible?
I know.
Well, let's first talk about how both of you individually entered the voiceover industry. So I'll have Rob go first, since we're going in alphabetically ordered last names.
Sure. So I don't do a lot of voiceover work. I sort of fell into this. I've been an actor since I was 9. And at the time that I think it was probably the first or second time that the Hardy Boys had been on a game, a group of us were contacted to do a bunch of voices, and I happened to get cast as Joe. And I honestly don't even remember how many years ago that was, 15-ish years ago, maybe. And so that's really kind of what started it. I had some experience in radio when I was in college. And, you know, obviously actors training, but really in terms of doing voiceover for a game or anything like that, Nancy Drew was my first kind of foray into that.
Yeah, same here. I guess I should clarify, maybe you already know this, Tammy, but I'm the second Frank. There's actually an original Frank before me.
You're the third Frank, Jonah.
I'm the third? Oh my gosh.
Yeah, Josh Sleva was the first, then Wayne Raleigh did it a couple of times, and then you.
Right.
Yep.
But kind of similar to Rob. Rob and I actually, we both know each other. We're both in the theater community in Seattle, Washington. Maybe a little less more so these days, but the same way Rob came to it. I was doing voices in some shows. There's a series of late night shows called Sergeant Rigsby and His Amazing Silhouettes. And it's a local playwright who writes a lot of naughty tales, and they're done in silhouette as shadow puppets. So he always has a crew of voice actors voicing all those characters. And someone else who is in that troupe, her name is Carrie Healy. I don't know if you've interviewed her in the past, because she's done voices for the Nancy Drew games as well. She referred me to the casting director probably back in 2003 or something like that. And I auditioned. I don't think I got the audition for the first game I did, but then I did the second game, doing various voices, kind of extra voices here and there. And then when Wayne, the second Frank Hardy, left the series, I got the call to see if that was something I'd be interested in, is taking over the role of Frank Hardy.
Because the Hardy Boys were introduced around, I think, 2002 with The Secret of the Scarlet Hand. So that is when, Rob, I think you joined. And then Jonah, his first game, for our listeners who do not know, was The Haunted Carousel, which he played Harlan Bishop and a couple of other characters, followed by Danger on Deception Island, The Haunting of Castle Malloy. And your first game as Frank was Danger by Design. I think that was 2009 or something like around that time. So, and I do want to preface that we will be talking a little bit about spoilers right now, but Jonah, you have actually voiced a villain or two. So what is it like to play those type of games and then finally get the extra pieces towards the end and use that to develop the villain character?
Correct. Yeah, I won't spoil it. I won't say which villain I've played. But I will say that, you know, my villain, the voice that I did do, it was very similar to my voice. I mean, you want to start off a villain not sounding like a villain. And I think the producer at the time was Anne Ludwig, and I was in the recording booth, and I kept wanting to go evil. I kept wanting to make it evil and sound terrible and terrifying. And she kept reining me in, and she said, "No, we can't know that he's the villain, Jonah." So, I mean, that's always the challenge in, I think, especially voice acting and regular acting as well, is just creating a character that has an arc, even though the villain that I played is, I mean, he turns pretty hardcore when he is revealed as the villain. But you want to flesh it out, you know. You don't want to give it away, and that's the magic of a mystery game, and especially these games, is having lots of clues that might lead you to down a couple different paths, but then uncovering the clue that makes everything happen, makes you solve the game.
And for both of you, this question is mainly because sometimes you're just playing the Hardy Boys in the games where it's over the cell phone. So are you only getting your sides of the story?
Rob, you want to take that?
Yeah, I'll take that one. So it's kind of a multi-parted answer, but the first, we get just a few pages with mostly just our sides. We do, it kind of depends on the flow of the day. If they have time, they'll give us kind of a rundown of what's going on, because that'll help inform the urgency of a specific line or how something is delivered. But usually we know kind of a general arc of the story, but certainly not specifics. And then, you know, there is definitely some discovery as we get the sides. Typically, we don't see the sides for sometimes not until the day we get there, and sometimes it's a few days before that we get them emailed to us, so we have a chance to review. But there's not a lot of spoilers before we get there. I have played the game a few times. I have to say I'm really bad at games. So I find myself just kind of going, well, I don't know what the clues are. I can't follow this, and that's a Rob Jones thing, not a game thing. I think the games are fantastic. I'm just bad at it.
I actually have stepkids, and so every time we do a game, we'll get a free copy of it, and I think I had a stack of these games sitting somewhere, and they booted it up, and they actually got a lot further than I ever have.
Same here, Jonah, with my stepson. Same deal. Yep.
So kind of fun to watch over their shoulders, though, and especially when you hear your voice.
And they're way better at it than us.
Yeah,
for sure.
You hear your voice in the back room or something, and you're like, "What? That's me, but I'm here." Oh,
is it surreal when you hear it?
Kind of, but it's fun too, and. You know, the games come out so long after, like, I don't know, a year and a half or so after we record the voices. So I usually don't remember that we've laid down those tracks. And and the same, you know, Rob said we do get the sides. And I think usually we get some kind of general outline of the story, but it's not all spelled out. And especially for the Hardy Boys, a lot of what we do is, hey, Nancy, go down that road. Great try. Try again.
Yeah. Have you tried this?
Nancy. Yeah. It's a lot of like just take after take of encouraging words from the Hardy Boys to Nancy.
We have a really bad connection, Nancy.
Yeah.
Can't talk.
Yeah.
And then they finally had the Hardy Boys appear in the games in Last Train to Blue Moon Canyon. So what was it like to finally see your character in the game as opposed to just hear them?
I don't know for sure, but Rob and I have only recorded once together. Usually we come in separate to record our voices. That might have been the game where we actually were brought in and got to play off of each other a little bit.
Yep. Yeah. It's a little surreal just because, you know, I'm a lot older. I'm not going to speak for Jonah, but I'm a lot older than the Hardy Boys. And, you know, child at heart and all of that. But you know, I don't look at all like the Hardy Boys. So, you know, it's really fun to kind of see how my voice is represented in the game. But I also, I mean, I don't know if you can hear it this way, but you know, through this method. But when I do the voice of Joe, I bring him up a little bit, and so he's a little higher pitched than my normal voice. And so it's a little different, you know. I think and I don't know how I really sound, there's always that kind of how you hear yourself versus how other people hear you.
Yes.
But yeah, nobody's ever recognized me just because of my voice.
No, me neither. I'm part of my day job is I actually give presentations to high schoolers, and there's been a couple times where I brought up the fact that I've done these games, and a student in the crowd will be like, "No way!" So, kind of like that's fun to see, just someone put it together.
Do they accept a lot of improv when you're recording your role as Joe or Frank, or is it strictly the sides that you get?
Sometimes. There's a lot of asides that happen. Not a lot of asides, a lot of extra lines sometimes that are needed. Yeah. So I'd say we usually record all the scripted words first, and then there's usually an extra 20 minutes or so where they just need a line that sounds encouraging or a line that sounds like that's a bummer. Like, give us 3 different variations on this sentiment. So a little bit of improv sometimes.
I would say too that oftentimes there's an element of rewriting that's happening as they're hearing it. So we'll deliver something a certain way, and we might change a word because it flows better, and they'll just change it on the spot. But it's not like we're really improvising. Sometimes it's just the way the words flow when we're recording.
I will say the one time we did record together, I think we had a little fun, maybe sometimes a little too much fun, just recording, fantasy version of how Joe and Frank get under each other's skin, and had a little fun with that. I doubt any of that made it into the game, but it was fun in the recording studio and making everyone behind the booth laugh. I think Rob and I are both pulling for the Hardy Boys games. Like, come on, let's get this going.
Let's do that. That'd be fun. It's always as an actor, it's always more fun to work with other people. It's a lot. It's the crew that does the recording. It's been pretty consistent crew throughout, and so that's been fun over the years. And we have fun with them individually, I think, but it is a lot more fun to work together. So I absolutely welcome any more opportunities to be in adjoining booths, kind of facing each other, because that I think you get a lot more authentic reaction and playing off of each other that way.
Yeah, agreed.
Well, let's do a little bit of her interactive theater and welcome the Hardy Boys to the show, because I have some fun questions for them. I've always wanted to talk to them. So welcome, Frank and Joe, Joe and Frank, welcome.
Thanks, Tammy.
Thanks, Tammy.
It's so great to finally be able to speak to you, because you guys offer the best clues when I'm playing the games with Nancy. But my first question is, we could describe you guys having a relationship as brothers, being like the yin and yang of one another. So whereas the yin is associated with being soft, passive, creative, and intuitive, and the yang is associated with being fast, aggressive, bright, and passionate, which one do you think that you are in particular? And which one do you think the other one is?
Go ahead, Joe.
What do you think, Frank?
I'm going to say you're a yang-a-lang.
I don't know. That's a hard question. I look at it more as we play off each other really well, and I look at things with a little bit more humor and a little bit. I try to get under Frank's skin as much as I can, because it makes my day go faster. I think Frank tends to be more serious and kind of more driven towards the end goal.
I'd like to say I'm more focused, Joe. Sometimes you're running circles around me. Can't keep up with you. We have a job at hand. Focus on the job.
Squirrel.
And, besides Nancy, sometimes you have your own cases and you have to call other people to help out, or they can join you on an adventure. But if you could have anybody on your next case out of these individuals, which would be Ned, Bess, or George, who would you like to join you on your next case, and why?
Oh, boy. Well, you already mentioned Bess might be someone who's interested in hanging out with me, so let's go with her.
That's a tough one. I like all of them for different reasons. I think for me it's George, but I don't really have a particular reason.
Out of all of the cases that you've done so far, do you have one in particular that you are most fond of or most impressed or most proud of actually solving?
I'm a little clueless. Nancy's the one who solves all the cases. We just try to help her to the best we can.
We just look at things from a different perspective a little bit and try to offer her that perspective. But she solves the cases.
And sometimes you guys get to stop by River Heights to see Bess and Nancy and George, and they have this great ice cream parlor Bess has told me about. Have you guys ever been there? And if so, what is one of your favorite flavors of ice cream or a specific milkshake that you love to get there?
Ooh, I'm going to go with mint chocolate chip.
I'm a big root beer float fan.
There you go. And I don't think I've ever been there. That's a strange thing about Nancy's relationship to Joe and I. We're never in the same place, it seems.
No, she was away the time that you got to visit Bess and George on the first case you ever worked on with her for Scarlet Hand, which was interesting. And the other interesting thing is that Bess said her favorite flavor is mint chocolate chip, Frank. I don't know about you, but it seems like it's an OTP, one true pair.
There's a little bit of synchronicity there, Frank.
Yeah, I suppose so.
Love is in the air.
Right. Not that song, Joe.
And as I said, your first case was Secret of the Scarlet Hand via phone, but then you finally got to join Nancy in person for the last train to Blue Moon Canyon, but also a trip to Hawaii. So
Kapu Cave.
That's right. And I love both versions. I love the train one, which is more historically interesting. And then Hawaii, you guys get to, enjoy the lovely weather. But for an upcoming third case, if you were to work in person with Nancy, where would you guys like to go for that specific case?
Grand Canyon.
You're thinking about the Southwest?
Sure.
I like the idea of going to Alaska.
You never know.
Maybe the case is to save the polar bears.
Now that would be interesting. You guys could be like best friends with some polar bears and some penguins.
I don't think
penguins are South America,
idea, folks. Let's be rational about all this.
And my final question for you guys is, if there were any case out of all of history that you would love to finally crack, what would that one be?
Oh boy, Joe, you got anything?
Whew. And for some reason, I can't remember the name of the case. You were talking about actual cases from history, correct?
Yes, any type of case.
I think it was just actually solved, but why is it escaping me?
Amelia Earhart, is that the one you're talking about?
That's not the one, but that's a really good one.
That's a good one.
I like Amelia Earhart. The one I was thinking that was solved was the guy who
jumped out of the plane?
Yes.
JB.
Thank you.
There you go. That's a good one. Stole a bunch of money,
Cooper.
Jumped off a plane.
Hijacked a plane, parachuted out of the plane over the Northwest. Love that one.
Did they officially solve it? I didn't even hear about this.
Oh, we solved it.
We solved it. No, that one, I guess I misspoke. That's not one that they solved, but they found some additional clues recently. They found some stacks of hundreds in a riverbank. I just want to go find the rest of that money.
And what would you do with it, Joe?
Go to Alaska.
Well, thank you guys so much for coming. I do hope that we get a special case with just you guys in it for a game in the near future. So I'll cross my fingers.
Yep.
Yeah, us too.
And scene.
Thanks, Tammy.
No, that was a lot of fun. I love the Hardy Boys, and I actually it was really interesting because I think a lot of girls had no idea who they were until they were introduced into the games, which I know it led me to read some of their books at Barnes and Nobles and purchase some of them. So I love that. I love that aspect.
I read both growing up, actually. I first read through all of the Hardy Boys, and then when I got to the end of that, my mom actually took me aside and said, "Well, there's this other series that's kind of the same, but it's Nancy Drew, so it's about a girl." And I was like, "Okay, fine," which I thought I'm considerably older, so that was in the 70s. That was pretty progressive of my mom to kind of push that on me, but I loved them. I thought they were great, and I have to confess to have had a slight crush on Nancy when I was younger. So.
Oh yeah. A little bit of the same. They were in the library too. I think I was more of a choose your own adventure guy growing up. So those are the books where you get to choose which path you want to take in the plot, and you turn to a different page to to get there. Those are super fun. And
those were really fun.
Easy to read too.
Yep. Do either of you remember the Hardy Boys TV show that was on in the maybe late 70s, early 80s?
I don't know.
I saw parts of it, but
yeah, it wasn't a great TV show, but it was a lot of fun.
See, I feel like they could do something serious with that now today. Like, I know a lot of stuff is pretty campy and silly, but I honestly think a lot of kids would like to be taken seriously and given that chance to actually have like mysteries like that, because I grew up with Scooby-Doo, and it's scary to a point but not too scary, but I think they could do something for Netflix.
That's a great idea. Let's pitch it.
Let's do it.
Yeah.
Let's put all the mystery people together. That would be cool if they put Frank and Joe and Nancy and Mystery Inc. and Batman, solving all these mysteries together.
Right. You can even bring Encyclopedia Brown in there.
Encyclopedia Brown, exactly. Those are the books I read as a kid.
Yeah. Oh, that would be great.
Just like a neighborhood boy detective. Those are fun too.
Yep. I think we have $1 million deal right here going on. We need to contact somebody, get an agent.
Oh, yeah, we got to get the licensing it together first.
That's true.
That's true.
Well, my final question for you guys. Again, thank you so much for coming on the show. This was a ton of fun. I'm so glad we finally got to have both of you talk on the same show. This is great. So my final question that I ask everybody who comes on the show is, if you could describe your experience working for Her Interactive and being a part of the Nancy Drew universe using one word, what would that be?
Unexpected.
Fun.